Hey everyone, it's Ali here from Concentric Sales and Lettings, and today's landlord advice video is all around the topic of insurances. Now, I get asked a lot by my clients what sort of insurances should they have in place, what should they look for, and so on and so forth. And listen, the reality is this isn't like a one size fits all kind of arrangement. Now, I've done a list here of things that I think are important, things that I think you should consider, and things that I think you should look for before agreeing to a policy. And perhaps if you've already got policies in place, maybe things that you should just have a read through and just check that you've got the adequate cover and you're happy with your policies. Before I get right into this list, obviously I should just say I'm not an insurance salesman. I'm not an insurance advisor. I've just obviously got experience in the field and in the topic, and this is just really a few tips and pointers for what I feel you guys should be aware of before you go down this path. So let's start it off. So number one on the list is public liability. Now this typically sort of covers against tenant injuries and so on. So I think it's really important that you have your obviously it's really important you have your PI insurance in place. Second on the list, so accidental damage. This is a big one, so a component that can be added to buildings insurance in particular. So when you take out buildings insurance, make sure it covers against accidental damage, and also malicious damage is another one as well. Good to have both of these things because you never know what type of tenant you're going to get. So again, make sure that your insurance policy, your buildings insurance, is adequate enough for both of those things. Now, whilst we're on the note of building insurance, so again, make sure it includes damage from a neighbouring property. So what I mean by this, so let me give you an example. How many times have we heard about flats have had leaks and it's been caused by the flat above, and it's not, it's something that should be covered on insurance? Well, make sure it's on there. If you're a terrace property and there's, some damage from faulty guttering on the neighbouring terrace or something like that, make sure this is on there. So your buildings insurance, make sure it covers damage from a neighbouring property, really important. Try to include boiler repair or replacement. This is a good one, and obviously quite often with these things, if the cost to repair is over a certain level or is quite significant, 9 times out of 10 they'll just replace it. But that is something that you can have included in your insurance cover. So again, just make sure it's on there if that's something you feel you need. Storm damage is a big one. Flood or fire, again, that's something that you should look for on your policies. These are all big things and very expensive if something like that does happen. Windows and doors, drains and plumbing, again, these are things that can be included on the policy, something you might want to look for. Also, make sure the cost of rehousing your tenant is covered. So if something serious does happen, and of course, whilst repairs are happening and whilst things are going on, the tenant can't live there, make sure the cost of rehousing them is covered, because unfortunately, landlords, if it's not, you would still have to pick up that liability and rehouse them and pick up any costs whilst work's going on and so on and so forth. So definitely make sure that's in your policy. Another big one at the moment. So I've got a number of landlords that have had certain issues and things happening, and one thing that's quite apparent is there's a lot of landlord insurances that don't cover pandemics, a lot of policies that don't cover pandemics. So obviously at the moment that's really important, it's quite a big one. There are a lot of insurers that are, and there are some insurers that have come under a bit of scrutiny for refusing to pay out for pandemic related things. But at the moment I would probably suggest that whatever insurance products you're looking at, just make sure that you're covered against pandemic related issues. Number 10, loss of rent, loss of income. Right now I think it's huge, and it's definitely a good thing to have. As I always say to people that, with rent protection, obviously it comes at a cost. Now, the main question you've got to ask yourself is, if your tenant stops paying the rent, can you survive? Can you cover the mortgage? Can you cover the bills? How would you be affected if that happened? So you've got to think about that. And if the answer is actually, I need that income, I rely on that income, then I would highly recommend that you get your rent covered. And there's some good ones out there to look into. Obviously, we can help point you in the right direction if you need some advice on that. But definitely something that I think you should have in place. Coupled with that, legal fees. Now, most policies around rent protection would be a rent and legal protection policy. And again, legal fees doesn't just necessarily mean against you having to evict a tenant, which of course a lot of them be. Legal fees cover would also be potentially if the tenant sues you for whatever reason. Of course, there's they've got more rights than ever, they've got more help than ever, it's more publicised than ever what they can do and what they can't do and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that tenants are going to sue you all the time, because reality is if you keep up your obligations, there should be no reason for it. However, if something were to happen, something were to go wrong, you know, think about having your legal fees covered in event of that coming at you. So legal fees is about you potentially having to evict them and picking up the court costs and bailiff fees and notice fees and all that kind of things, solicitors fees. And again, if it was coming back at you in any way, again, make sure you're covered there. Next is something that you can look at, landlord emergency cover. It's another thing you can include. So that would include like emergency call outs and things like that. Something small, but it is something that could be included there. Landlord liabilities is a big one. So again, if your tenant's injured from something that you are responsible for, so I know injured from loose wiring or something like that, you know, landlord, you have a responsibility to make sure that's not there. So again, you know, looking to cover landlord liabilities is a big one for me, because if you miss something and something went wrong, I think it's important that you have that protection in place. Here's another big one that people overlook, so vacant property cover. Now, a lot of insurance providers don't actually cover unless your property is tenanted. So during those void periods, you might find that your insurance actually isn't going to cover for anything that might happen there. And I mean, look, there's probably a small risk of maybe squatters. There could be a risk of mold and damp developing where it's maybe cold and empty and stuff like that. Could be a number of things, but again, just make sure you've got vacant property cover. Again, just check your policy and just see if that's in there, if that's something you feel you need. And lastly, just a bit of advice if you're a portfolio landlord, talk to your insurer about multi-property policies. What you typically would find, if you've got multi-properties, you'd find that actually there's probably some policies out there that would cover all of your properties. You'd have the same sort of level of cover, but you potentially would save on the cost of the policy for a multi-property policy as opposed to individually insuring each of your units. So really is well worth looking into, and it could well be a cost-cutting exercise if you haven't got something like that set up already. So that wraps up my insurance advice video. Guys, I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give the video a like, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe to Concentric TV, and you know, look out for more future videos. And please, again, if you guys have ever got anything that you want to know more about, any questions, anything you want some advice on, anything like that, please contact me. It's ali@concentricproperty.co.uk is my email address. Feel free to get in touch, or you can connect with me on social media. It's Ali Durrant. And of course, you know, I would like to try and tailor my content as much as possible to the needs of you guys, and you know, whatever I can help with. So thank you for joining me. Look out for my next video. See you all soon.